friends, Tracy here from the Sewing Channel. Welcome back, and if you're new here, welcome. Today I wanted to share with you just how easy it is to make a minky back quilt. Just not any minky back quilt, a quilt as you go minky back quilt. I'm going to cut up a Dollar General plush blanket and make it into this gorgeous quilt. As you can see, this quilt has so much fluidity to it. It's super soft and super cuddly. Now I know this one isn't done yet, but I wanted to share with you the process on how easy it is to connect a quilt as you go minky quilt. Enough talking already. I better go finish this quilt. Stay till the end of this video where I'll give you my final thoughts and my best tips to make this quilt. Free motion quilt on your quilt blocks just as you normally would on a quilt as you go quilt block. For today's demonstration, I am just free motion quilting a simple rose design. Now if you want more designs and you want to know how to make this particular design and tons more, go ahead and click the link in the top right hand corner where I have a free motion quilt along that is free for everyone. My quilt sandwich consists of one piece of white cotton and one piece of MINKY plush fabric. Now I happened to get mine at the Dollar General store and it was $25 for a king size. And what I did was just cut it up into squares so that I could make a quilt as you go quilt. When you add quilter's cotton to a plush MINKY type fabric and you omit the thick batting that's usually inside of it and you just have the cotton and the MINKY and you quilt on it, and even dense quilting does not make this quilt stiff. It makes it fluid and drapey and soft, and it's something that you truly don't mind laying with and cuddling with. It's so easy to connect these blocks too that you'll probably end up making one for every single person in your family. Trim your blocks to the size that you need for your quilt. I started with 12.5-inch blocks to begin with, but because of the free motion quilting, it stretches the MINKY a bit. I ended up trimming it to 11 inches. You'll need 1 inch in width piece of fabric by length of your block. And then you'll need a 2-inch in width piece of fabric by length of your block. Fold that 2-inch piece in half and crease it with a hot iron. Take your 2-inch folded piece of fabric. Lay it on the right side of one of your blocks. By right side, I mean top of the quilt. And you'll lay it right there and then you'll pop a few pins in. After the pins are nice and secure, you're going to lift that entire quilt piece up onto that 1-inch piece of fabric. Now that 1-inch piece of fabric is laying face up, right side up. And then I just flipped it all over, and you see there the right side now of that 1-inch piece is now facing the back of the quilt, the MINKY part. And you'll just unpin and repin so that all of those raw edges are nice and even along the edge there. Now, one of the biggest tips I can give you is you have to sew a true 1/4 inch seam allowance here. And if you don't, you're going to have a space in between your blocks and you don't want that. So there's my true 1/4 inch and all those pieces are together. My next step is to iron that 1-inch piece up, sort of get it going, and then bring it back to the table. Now you see it's nice and flat because I ironed it. Now I'm going to take the back of the other piece and connect it now to the right side of that 1-inch piece of fabric. The trick here is everything has to be even on the sides. You're going to pop some pins in. When we get to the sewing machine, we're going to sew another true 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now in order for our sewing foot not to get caught within those seams, we're going to sew on that all white part right there. we're not going to turn it over and sew on the other side. What I find is the threads and such and the edge gets caught on the sewing foot. So this makes a nice clean stitch all the way down. And here I'm just showing you the 1/4 inch seam. Now take it to your pressing station and you can see it looks gorgeous on the back. The back is all set and done. Now let's take a look at that 2-inch front piece. You see how that opening is right there? We need to make sure that all that is nice and flat and meeting together. If it doesn't meet right to the edges with each other, then you didn't sew a true 1/4 inch seam. You may need to go back and do that because we don't want a gap. I'm sorry this is blurry right here, but my camera didn't refocus. But what I want you to do next is iron or press that flap over in the way that it's supposed to go to cover that area. And then you're going to sew a top stitch all the way down one side, just on the very edge, tacking that all down. And then you're going to flip it around and put a top stitch on the other side. And with both pieces sewn down, you can see it looks just absolutely perfect. We're going to trim off the sides. And how I do that is just to make sure everything is nice and straight. I just line it up with both blocks. And you see there's a little tiny bit extra right there on the edge. And it just, the way I line it up, it just comes right off. And just darling, and it connects just like that. And you would connect your cross seams in the same manner. They'll just be longer seams. This method is truly so easy, and it makes for such clean, nice, neat work. The king size plush blanket that I bought at the Dollar General was about 2.5 yards of 108 MINKY fabric. And if I were to go to a fabric store or buy it online, it would have been double the amount that I paid. I paid $25, so I'm talking $50 to $60, even $70 in some cases that would cost you in a normal fabric store. When you work with MINKY type plush fabric, you need to know that when you go to free motion quilt it or quilt it in general, it has a grip to it. So it's going to want to adhere to your bed of your sewing machine. So you have to be ready to move it and maneuver it, which isn't a big deal if you're ready for it. One of the major tips I can give you when working with MINKY and cotton together like this is make your block about 1.5 to 2 inches larger than you want to trim it to. Even when you pin them together, they still have a tendency to shift away from each other, leaving gaps on all of the sides. So making it bigger is a major tip. Until next time on the Sewing Channel, take care.